Overcoming AWS region limitations. Implementing Cognito Authentication with ALB using OIDC. This podcast is brought to you by Business Compass LLC. We are an Amazon Web Services advanced consulting partner. We build and migrate workloads to Amazon Cloud. Our website is businesscompassllc.com. Our phone number is 973-638-2228. Our email address is contact@businesscompassllc.us. Overcoming regional limitations. Integrating Cognito Authentication with ALB in unsupported AWS regions. AWS Cognito offers robust authentication and authorization mechanisms, enabling secure access to your applications. However, one of the challenges developers face is the need for Cognito support in newer or certain AWS regions. This limitation can be a roadblock, particularly when you're trying to implement user authentication via AWS Application Load Balancer, ALB. This podcast will explore navigating this challenge by leveraging OpenID Connect, OIDC, as a workaround. We'll walk you through the steps required to integrate Cognito authentication with ALB in regions where Cognito is unsupported, ensuring that your application remains secure and accessible. Introduction, background and context of the challenge. Ensuring consistent security practices is paramount when deploying applications across various AWS regions. AWS Cognito is a popular choice for handling authentication, but not all AWS regions support this service. This can be problematic, mainly when your architecture depends on ALB to manage traffic and enforce authentication. This blog post addresses how to implement Cognito authentication with ALB using OIDC in unsupported regions, offering a comprehensive workaround to this common issue. Identifying the issue: lack of Cognito support in newer AWS regions. AWS continues to expand its global footprint by adding new regions, but Cognito is only sometimes available in these newer regions. The absence of Cognito can make maintaining a unified authentication strategy across all deployments difficult. For instance, if your application is deployed in a region without Cognito, users won't be able to authenticate against your application using Cognito directly. This creates a need for an alternative approach that can still leverage Cognito's capabilities. Exploring solutions, initial attempts and documentation review. When faced with this issue, the first step is to consult AWS documentation and community forums for potential solutions. Common suggestions include waiting for AWS to roll out Cognito in the desired region or redirecting traffic to an area where Cognito is available. However, these solutions are only sometimes feasible or desirable. Through trial and error and extensive documentation review, it became clear that a more immediate and practical solution is needed, one that can be implemented without significantly changing the architecture or causing downtime. Unveiling the workaround. Utilizing OIDC for authentication. The workaround involves utilizing OIDC to authenticate users via Cognito, even in regions where Cognito is not natively supported. You can bypass the regional limitations by configuring ALB to authenticate against an OIDC provider, Cognito. OIDC, an identity layer on top of the OAuth 2.0 protocol, enables applications to verify end users' identities based on the authentication performed by an authorization server. It provides a standardized way to authenticate users, which can be leveraged to use Cognito as an identity provider, even in unsupported regions. Gathering necessary parameters. Extracting information from Cognito for OIDC configuration. Before setting up the OIDC configuration in ALB, you must gather specific parameters from your Cognito user pool. These include issuer and user pool ID, the issuer URL and the unique identifier for your user pool, custom domain and endpoints. If you use a custom domain with Cognito, you'll need the custom domain URL and endpoints. Client ID and secret. These credentials are necessary for OIDC to authenticate users with Cognito. Let's break down how to gather these parameters. Issuer and user pool ID. To find the issuer and user pool ID, navigate to the Amazon Cognito console. Select the user pool you want to use. Go to the General Settings tab. Under App Integration, locate the App Client settings where the issuer URL and user pool ID are displayed. Custom domain and endpoints. If you've set up a custom domain, you can find the details under the domain name section within the Cognito console. The endpoints typically follow the format. Authorization endpoint. https://custom domain/OAuth2/authorize. Token endpoint. https://custom domain/OAuth2/token. User info endpoint. https://custom domain/OAuth2/userinfo. Client ID and secret. These are under the App Client settings where you registered your application. Ensure you securely store the client secret during the OIDC setup. Configuring ALB Listener Rule with OIDC Key, Step-by-Step Guide. With the parameters in hand, it's time to configure your ALB to authenticate users using OIDC. Open the ALB console. Navigate to the AWS Management Console and open the ALB settings. Select or create a target group. Define where authenticated traffic will be directed. Configure the listener rule. Choose the HTTPS listener and select View/Edit Rules. Create a new rule and add an authenticate action. Select OIDC as the authentication type. Enter the issuer URL, client ID, and client secret. Define the authorization endpoints. Save the configuration. Save your configuration and test the connection once all parameters are correctly entered. Testing the setup, verifying successful authentication flow. After setting up OIDC authentication, testing the authentication flow is crucial. Attempt to access your application through the ALB. Open the application URL. You should be redirected to the Cognito login page. After successful authentication, the ALB should direct you to the application's target group. Verify that users can log in and access resources without any issues. Bonus section: replicating the solution in Terraform. For those using infrastructure as code, IAC, tools like Terraform, here's how to replicate the above solution. Resource AWS_pound_ listener app. Load_balancer_arn equals AWS_pound.app.arn. Port equals 443. Protocol equals HTTPS. SSL_policy equals ALB Security Policy 2016-08. Default_action. Type equals authenticate OIDC. Authenticate_OID. Issuer equals issuer URL greater than. Client_IID equals client ID greater than. Client_secret equals client secret. Token_endpoint equals token endpoint. User_info_endpoint equals user info endpoint. Authorization_endpoint equals authorization endpoint. Session_cookie_name equals Ocelbath session cookie. Session_timeout equals 604,800. This configuration snippet can be customized based on your specific requirements. Using Terraform automates the setup process and ensures consistency across different environments. Conclusion: navigating the limitations of AWS regions can be challenging, especially when critical services like Cognito are unavailable. By leveraging OIDC with ALB, you can maintain a consistent authentication experience across all areas, ensuring your applications remain secure and user-friendly. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Please share this podcast, visit our website and follow our social media links.